Keir Starmer has finally responded to Elon Musk's multiple attacks on Labour, recently calling for the UK to be liberated from this tyrannical government.
On the question of Elon Musk, look, I, I, I think most people are more interested in what's going to happen to the NHS, frankly, than what's happening on Twitter. But you asked me a really important question that's been in the news for the last few days. I am going to, with permission, just answer it quite fully because it is a really important set of issues. And let me start with this. Child sexual exploitation is utterly sickening, utterly sickening. And for many, many years, too many victims have been completely let down by perverse ideas about community relations, or by the idea that institutions must be protected above all else. And they've not been listened to, and they've not been heard. And when I was chief prosecutor for 5 years, I tackled that head on, because I could see what was happening. Those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible, they're not interested in victims. They're interested in themselves. Those who are cheerleading Tommy Robinson, not interested in justice. They're supporting a man who went to prison for nearly collapsing a grooming case, a gang grooming case. These are people who are trying to get some kind of vicarious thrill from street violence that people like Tommy Robinson promote. And so just as I took on the criminal justice system and the institutions when I was chief prosecutor, I'm prepared to call out this for what it is. We've seen this playbook many times, whipping up of intimidation and threats of violence, hoping that the media will amplify it. But when the poison of the far right leads to serious threats to Jess Phillips and others, then in my book, a line has been crossed. I enjoy the cut and thrust of politics, the robust debate that we must have, but that's got to be based on facts and truth, not on lies, not on those who are so desperate for attention that they're prepared to debase themselves and their country.
I mean, I do want to first say that it's ironic that Starmer is talking about people lying when he is one of the most dishonest politicians we've probably ever had. I think that's something worth pointing out. Having said that, there is another person who's an even bigger liar, and that's Elon Musk. Lewis, what do you make of that clip? I mean, did you think Starmer's response was strong enough, or was it more weak sauce from him?
In terms of Starmer responses I think it was on the better end. I still wouldn't call it good. It was better for Starmer. I just feel like this was a perfect opportunity to really steal the spotlight the way Farage does and the way other people do, right? We are living in an attention economy where people who can garner attention, whether it's Musk, Farage, or whoever else, attention is currency. And I feel like, again, it was a missed opportunity by Starmer to really deliver something that was good, because you've got the richest man in the world with a platform with tens of millions of active users. You've got Reform supporters, you've got Tommy supporters, all looking at this. It's all eyes on Kia, and I feel like he could have gone further. He could have been more spunky, a bit more charismatic. And again, like, I want to advise him, but to help them almost like take on the far right, which is something that we want to do as well, is that you have to perform. Unfortunately, it is a bit of theatre. And you do need to act theatrically. If he would have just brought a bit more spunk and humanity into it, I think it could have actually been a really good speech and a really good response.
The thing is, though, he's a technocrat by
Yeah.
nature, so he's not gonna. I mean, I would love him to turn around and say, "Who is this jerk, Elon Musk?" I mean, he's South African. He's not even American. Yet he's buying their elections. What's it got to do with us? Like, this guy should butt out. He's the richest person in the world. The reason why he wants to influence this election, the reason why he's backing these other parties, is because he wants to get tax cuts for himself and make himself richer. That's like the populist answer. It would be the great answer, but that's not something Keir Starmer's ever going to do, because, as I said, he's a technocrat.
Do you know actually what would have been better, though, is for him to turn around and go even further and say, Why didn't you take a look at the list of banned people who Elon Musk allowed back onto Twitter
Yeah,
when he bought it?
absolutely. You've got
Um,
literal neo-Nazis going back on there,
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he could even talk about, you don't even need to explain who this person is if you don't know. But if he would have turned around and said, he let Alex Jones back onto Twitter, a guy who got sued for up to $1 billion for denying that one of the biggest mass shootings in American history, where literally dozens of children, and we're not talking about high school here, we're talking about what we'd call primary school, because obviously all school shootings are bad, right? Most of them do happen in high schools. The reason why Sandy Hook was so bad because it happened to little children, right? And he allowed that person back onto the platform. That is how you say that Elon Musk does not care about kids. You could, obviously he's not going to do this, but what I would have said is that Donald Trump has just nominated Matt Gaetz to become the Attorney General. He's obviously now withdrawn. Why is he withdrawn? Because he's literally being accused of trafficking 17-year-olds, which, by the way, in America, that is underage because the age of consent is 18. Oh, on top of that, he's nominated another person, I think, to be the Secretary of Education, who is currently being sued and investigating for allowing child sexual abuse under their company. So, if you really want to talk about protecting children, is this the right crowd to be stirring this up? And I completely agree with this right wing narrative. He is right when he says it's a right wing thing because they weaponize other people's victimhood, especially that of children, especially that of women. This is what the Nazis did as well. The Nazis did this to demonize other groups of people, to say that they're coming, that they were blaming, cases of rape and sexual abuse on Jewish people. And obviously, scapegoating is something that the far right are very good at, to blame problems on other people. And these people obviously don't care about children. It's a tool that they use.
Yeah, I mean,
And there's nothing on record to prove that they actually do care or have ever done anything to help children.
I've always said, look, these guys do not give a shit about child grooming gangs because they selectively choose who the perpetrator is. If they're Pakistani, they're Indian, people of color, suddenly they really, really care about children. But when you look at the statistics and it's typically white men, suddenly they ignore it. Or if it's Matt Gaetz, or if it's Donald Trump, who has officially been found to have raped someone. Matt Gaetz, who was the only person who voted against child trafficking laws,
Ju- ju-
human
ju-
trafficking laws, sorry.
Just to correct the record, just so we don't get sued, but I'm sure Matt Gaetz isn't going to see this. He got found by an investigation through Congress, obviously not
Yes.
legally speaking, but we know he's guilty.
Yeah. And these people are the worst people, and yet they ignore it. Now, look, don't get me wrong. If you're black, brown, you're a man or a woman, if you're in a grooming gang, you're a piece of shit, and I want Keir Starmer or whoever's in power to smash you. You should be in jail.
Mhm.
But I don't care the color of the skin. If you're doing it, it's wrong. But the far right only talks about it when it's people of color, when it's Muslims, because it's their agenda. And
Mhm.
you point that out, and they'll just say back to you, "You just don't care," and that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
because the thing I cringed about in that segment in that video was when Starmer said, "We need to stick to truth and facts." I've said this so many times now. Truth and facts don't mean shit in 2025 politics. That doesn't matter. Narratives do, and I think Starmer absolutely needs to understand that, and he clearly doesn't. That
Mm.
narratives is politics. That is the politics of today, and is why being a populist, a left populist, I think is the only thing that can fight against right wing populism.
Yes, well, speaking of narratives, though, it's been very frustrating to see from the mainstream media about how they've been talking about this as well. Because when they've been referencing the baseline of the story, which is the grooming gangs, the way they're phrasing it, I saw our previous guest Femi do a video about this as well, talking about how they're not really telling the story correctly. They're actually making it sound like there is a Pakistani grooming gang problem when there isn't. Because if Laura Kay did this on yesterday when she was interviewing Nigel Farage, she literally set the scene as like, oh, there was this investigation which showed that British Pakistani men, there was a problem with like mass grooming and all this and the grooming gangs. It's like, it's not true the way you're phrasing it. What happened is that the specific cases which got investigated by a Times reporter, when he looked into those cases, an overrepresentation in that specific instance was from British Pakistani men in that one scandal. When you actually zoom out and look at the data, and this happened in 2019, Priti Patel, as the Home Secretary, commissioned a report to look into basically who's behind grooming in the UK. And guess what? the numbers don't say it's British Pakistani men, it's overwhelmingly white men. And there's no overrepresentation from that group of people. But under the context of the way the mainstream media have been portraying this story, because they kind of want to get that bit out of the way so they can jump to the juicy stuff, right? They want to talk about Musk and they want to talk about Farage. So when they're doing the preamble, they're not telling the story correctly.
I mean, they're
And they're
doing the
actually
work
pushing
for
they're actually
them.
pushing the far right
Yeah,
narrative.
they're doing the work for them because they say, okay, you're right about this, but let's talk about how Keir Starmer's going to defend himself against Elon Musk. Whereas a proper media, that's what we're doing. We're actually looking at this source, the story itself, and we're deconstructing that, saying it's a load of bollocks. But Laura Kay, who's on God knows the amount of money, one of my most famous journalists, who like to say that, is just gleefully pushing this narrative. I think it's quite annoying actually because Elon is that bad. He's got me defending Starmer. Look, Keir Starmer wasn't the person I wanted as Prime Minister, but we had an election 6 months ago, and Musk is doing his best to interfere in our electoral system. Look, our country voted for Labour. Musk is a foreign billionaire, the richest man in the world, I may add. This has piss all to do with him. So uh, Elon Musk just needs to fuck off, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He just needs to absolutely just fuck off, fly in one of his rockets to Mars, which, by the way, he said he'd be at Mars this year. He lied.
Yeah.
Um, and just,
Oh, actually, I think it was 2023 it's supposed to, because I think in 2013 it said
uh,
in 10 years' time we will have people on Mars. So it's
uh,
actually 2 years, well,
just
maybe a year to be
Just been
generous, a year out.
prioritizing other things. But yeah, the whole thing is a bit of a joke. So we've got, Musk right now interfering in the UK quite deeply. We've got him messing around in Brazil, a little bit in Italy, and obviously, more importantly as well, Germany. Germany's got the next election in February, and he's backing the AfD. And we've had, the editor of one of the most prominent newspapers resigning because they allowed Elon Musk to do an op-ed supporting the AfD. Um, we brought this up yesterday, right? About the idea that the right for years have created the left wing boogeyman billionaire who's behind the shadows, George Soros, and whoever else. Obviously, it ties into a larger anti Semitic Jewish conspiracy theory, but obviously, they love to focus on someone like Soros, who's, in relative terms to many of Trump's donors, actually quite poor. George Soros isn't that rich compared to the other billionaires who back him. Um, and they say he pulls the strings, he donates to all these things. Musk is doing that out in the open. He is the Soros that he is the boogeyman that they've created. Again, I don't want to keep rehashing that issue, but I think it's still very important just to highlight the constant hypocrisy of the people who support these people and believe in these conspiracy theories. But Musk seems to be spiraling very quickly. Uh, the amount of tweets that he's putting out, it seems very unhinged. Um, I can't imagine he's going to last long with Trump.
It's the Graham Linehan effect because, look, I feel like a lot of these guys go in this crazy pipeline and it starts with transphobia. Because back in 2018, Tesla had a 100 out of 100 score on the LGBTQ, like how pro queer they were. And then Musk is like, this is amazing. Like, fuck you to the haters. Like, Tesla once again is standing up for trans people. And if you don't like it, don't buy our cars. That's in 2018. And look, it's famously, he has a trans daughter who's estranged, clearly treated her like shit. And by the way, like when he was pretending to be a liberal, like he wasn't actually liberal. He was probably quite right wing anyway, the way he treated his family. But like forward facing, he was pretending to be a liberal. In just a few short years, though, he's just gone on some weird divorced energy kind of thing. Graham Linehan, same sort of thing. J.K. Rowling again. Like it's. I'm not saying it all starts in transphobia, by the way, but this it seems to be a sort of pattern. And I mean, I would say that Musk is just clearly mentally unwell, and it just shows that
Yeah.
no one should have this amount of power.
On top of that, it's been
Deranged
reported
human
multiple
being.
times that he's, like, addicted to ketamine,
Yeah,
and
he's doing it. He's tweeting when he's on cat. Have you seen those videos when he's with Trump and he's on his phone and you just know he's name searching himself or getting angry on Twitter? He's next to the president elect and he's on Twitter.
did you
He's
hear
just
about
a
this? Did you hear
loser.
about the story where he was cosplaying a second account as his child? Did you hear about this?
Yes, I did. It was
It's
himself.
just absolutely strange. For
Fucking
anybody
weird.
watching who doesn't know what I'm talking about, it was found out that Elon Musk actually had this is verified, by the way. He verified it himself. Someone found a second account, which was owned by Elon Musk, which was cosplaying as his, I think, 3-year-old child, and he was posting stuff like, "I want to go to Japan." and just really weird stuff.
Like sexual
Pretending,
shit, wasn't it?
yeah, it's just really strange. And he admitted that it was him once he got asked. He's just such a bizarre man. But again, because we live in this capitalist society, he's rich, he's successful, so people will just idolize him regardless of any of his behavior because people worship money and capitalism over anything. So regardless of what behaviors he gives off, whether it's calling random people on the internet pedophiles, actually that reminds me. We had a British diver when I was in Thailand when
Yes.
this happened. I was in Thailand when this went down, when those kids were stuck in that cave in Thailand in 2017, I think it was, 2018. There was kids stuck in a cave. A British diver went out to lead a team to rescue them. Elon Musk offered a mini submarine or something to go and help them, and the guy was like, "No, thank you, not very helpful. We've got this." And he literally called this man a pedophile. It's talk about wanting to
I
actually
mean,
protect
I was
children.
talking about that story with my brother just before Christmas because I read the headlines. I knew it was bad, but he watched a film. There was like a mockumentary film about it a few years later, and I didn't realize how insane that story was. Like the teacher and the kids were trapped in a cave that was filled with water for days and days and days, and they had to take someone out one by one, and they were expecting all of them to die, and they all survived. And yeah, Elon Musk was like, "Oh, because he wanted to be the main character. I can help with my stupid little underwater thing." And the experts are like, "No, this isn't going to work." And he insisted, like, "Look, just fuck off. Like, you're actually embarrassing yourself." And then he had the temerity to call one of our heroes, a diver who got some of these kids out, a paedophile because he just didn't like him. Deranged human being.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.